Welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Aaron Dean. A rape conviction that one man says has been hanging over his head for 50 years is now gone. A judge has removed the conviction of Leonard Mack in a 1975 rape case. The ruling came down on his 72nd birthday. He spent more than 7 years in prison for the crime and has been trying to get his name cleared ever since. DNA testing eliminated Mack from the crime and identified another man who has since confessed. Mack was misidentified by the victims, two high school girls, one of whom was legally blind. And he says that the reality of the judge's decision is setting in.
It feels unreal because, well, it finally happened, and because it took so long, 48 years, and the reason it feels real is because the reality is setting in. Yesterday, when the judge read her decision, and said that the conviction had been vacated and I was exonerated, I just thank the Lord that the day finally came. And now the reality of it, as a result of the conviction, of the charge, to be charged with that and to have to go to prison for it, knowing that I didn't do it, the animosity and the hatred that I had back then, and being put in prison, in maximum security prisons, knowing that I didn't do it. And I was determined in my mind that I was going to prove my innocence and that I wasn't going to give up. Even though every time I'd submit a motion, it would get denied, but I never gave up. I had that hope that something was going to happen, that my innocence was going to be proven. It was going to be shown that I didn't do it, even though back then they didn't have DNA.
When you look at this case, you see that the IDs were completely unreliable. The serological evidence was exculpatory. And despite that, police decided not to reopen the case and see if there were any other leads. So to us, it was a really compelling case of innocence.
The New York statute of limitations says that the new suspect cannot be prosecuted for the 1975 crime, but he is currently in custody for a 2004 sex crime. According to the Innocence Project, 64% of the organization's exonerations are due to misidentification. And in a study of the exonerations since 1989, Black Americans are 7 times more likely to be falsely convicted for serious crimes than white Americans. And a federal judge has ordered Texas to remove floating barriers in the Rio Grande that the state is using to deter border crossings. The Justice Department sued Texas in July over the barriers. The department says that Texas and the state's governor violated the Rivers and Harbors Appropriation Act by building a structure in U.S. water without the permissions of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The judge ruled ordering Texas to take down the barriers in 7 days. There is new evidence that remote learning during the pandemic created inequality in education around the world. The UN's Education and Culture Organization, UNESCO, says that reliance on online learning is hurting education equity. It led to what it calls worldwide edtech crisis that included students in the US, Brazil, Kenya, and Britain. The report said that by May 2020, 60% of the national remote learning programs relied entirely on the internet. But about half of the primary and secondary school students in the world targeted by those programs did not have internet access at home, so they couldn't participate. That's nearly 500 million young people. Well, the only Republican woman running for president is one of many candidates meeting with an organization that has been labeled an extremist group. Nikki Haley hosted a town hall with Moms for Liberty in New Hampshire. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the organization routinely goes after school curriculum and books. Some of Moms of Liberty actions have effectively limited discussion around race and LGBTQ plus identity in schools. The group has campaigned for book bans and appealed to conservative school boards. The SPLC compares Moms for Liberty to pro-segregation groups that popped up after the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Haley, along with Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, have all acknowledged the work of Moms for Liberty. There are a few rising stars to look out for in the upcoming 2024 election cycle. A former Pennsylvania State House representative says that these are the candidates to watch as we get closer. From diverse backgrounds as well, which is very exciting. You know, is there anybody that you're paying close attention to, or that you see that are rising stars within, you know, the Democrats or more liberal parties?
You know, there are a lot of candidates. Let me say this: there are more women are running for office and winning. More people of color, more second generation immigrants, certainly more LGBTQ plus people than any time in U.S. history. We're nowhere near the numbers that we need to be at. The Williams Institute at UCLA calculates that in the United States, there should be somewhere between 20 and 21,000 openly LGBTQ plus elected officials. And there's just over 1,000 of us, or of them now. And that's, you know, simply, that's a massive detriment to the work that we all do in LGBTQ equality. One of the candidates that I'm really supporting right now that I'm very excited about, I guess there are two candidates that I'm very excited about. One is a woman named Janessa Goldbeck, who is running for a commissioner's position in San Diego, California. Janessa is an openly queer woman who's been supported by the LGBTQ Victory Fund, by Emily's List. She has run a nonprofit, and she's a veteran. She was a Marine. The other is Sarah McBride in Delaware. Sarah made history when she spoke at the DNC National Convention as the first trans person to ever do so, and then went on to make history being elected to the state Senate in Delaware. You know, if she wins her congressional seat, she will make history again, and that's a candidacy worth supporting.
Yeah, and we just recently spoke with Sarah, so it's definitely exciting to see, you know, where that journey is going to take her. Charles Stevens is working to educate and highlight different stories and identities. Stevens' organization, the Counter Narrative Project, wants to change the narrative around Black queer men. Before your organization started, what was the narrative surrounding, you know, Black, gay, bisexual, queer men versus where it is now with the work that you all are doing? Have you seen a shift? Has it gotten better?
Absolutely. So I also want to just make clear for our viewers that sometimes narrative and story are used synonymously. We see a narrative as being comprised of several stories, right? So we don't see them as being the same. And so when I started CNP, there were stories about what it meant to be a Black gay man that I found distressing, that I found dehumanizing, that I found disempowering. And that was really part of what inspired me to want to start CNP, because I wanted to see a different story. I wanted to see different stories. I wanted to see more diverse stories. I wanted to see more complicated stories. Like I remember around 2013, when I, you know, in the early years of CNP, when we were first getting off the ground, like I remember as an exercise, we would just Google Black gay man and look at what came up. And let me tell you, it wasn't anything good. Or you have to scroll down to like maybe the 4th or 5th page before you got to something. But it was, you know, and not that it was necessarily bad, but it just wasn't the kinds of stories that social media and the internet was telling me in 2013 was not the experience that I was having as a Black gay man, nor was it wasn't what I was seeing. So I wanted to see more complicated stories. The good news is that several years later, I think that the LGBTQIA+ community has made tremendous strides as it relates to visibility. That visibility, there's certainly more visibility. There's also more complex visibility. We see more representations of our community in popular culture. We see more representations of our community in mass media. But I still think we have a ways to go. And therefore, I think the work of CNP continues. But I do applaud, and I am very encouraged by particularly content creators that have put their stories and put their bodies and put their lives on the line in the service of creating more visibility for our community.
Thanks so much for joining us for Advocate today. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even subscribe on our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Aaron Dean.